Can you hear us, Sister Denise? And who do we have on iPhone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Assalamualaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How are you, sir?
I am blessed, grateful, and thankful.
Me too. I second that emotion. Smoking said that one.
Yes, and Sister Denise, what city are you located in?
I'm in St. Louis, Farrakhan City.
How's the weather out there right now?
As a matter of fact, it's warming up. If I can say 30 to 40 degrees is warming. Tomorrow it's supposed to be 60. I don't know what's going on, but I like it.
Strange weather in diverse places. That's what's going on.
Yeah, real man. Yeah, but I like it. I like it, you know.
Just make sure you have your survival kits in place.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm about to can later on today. You know, Brother Luqman, I was looking at where people live and the palace where the queen and all of them live in Britain. I saw her canning. They showed all her canning jars. I said, what? Okay. I know we on point.
Right.
Yes, sir. That's what I was thinking about. I said, oh, they thinking about survival too, huh?
Yeah, but their time is up.
Yes, sir.
Their time is up. So who do we have on iPhone? iPhone me. Could you come off mute?
I think it's me, Brother Luqman. For some reason, my name disappeared.
Okay.
So did it show that was me?
No, it just says iPhone me.
Okay.
Well, assalamu alaikum, Sister Ania.
Wa alaikum salam.
Recording in progress.
Oh, we got an echo. All right. How are you and the great Brother Wahid? Can you hear me, Sister Ania? I think we have another echo. All right. We'll wait until Sister.
Okay, Brother Luqman, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. I hear you now.
Okay, yes, we're doing great.
Praise be to Allah.
If you'll come around the corner, he could give you the greetings. Right here.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Brother Luqman's giving you the greetings.
So Luqman.
Yes, sir.
Assalam wa salam.
Yes, sir. How are you, brother?
Fine. If I looked as handsome as you, I feel much better.
Glad to hear your voice. And even though I can't see you, I can see your smiling faces.
I'm definitely smiling too.
Yes, sir.
For a brief moment.
Say again?
Okay. Hold on, people. Can you see?
There you go.
Okay.
Come in the picture.
There he is. There's the king and the queen.
There he is.
Oh, Akbar.
Smiling faces.
Smiling faces.
We got lots of talking to do one day, Brother Luqman. I don't know when, but I'll be listening to you all the time, but we got lots of talking to do.
You know what?
Inshallah.
God willing, brother, within
Yes,
the
sir.
next 6 to 8 months, my wife and I are going to take a road trip out there to visit you and Sister Ania.
Is that right?
We're gonna come out there. We're gonna come out there see what it's like out in Arizona. I'm scouting out some places. When it's time for me to retire, I'm scouting out some places where I can go for retirement.
Okay, that sounds great, brother. Will you be in Chicago for Savior's Day?
God willing, I have everything set up already.
I look forward to seeing you in Savior's Day, inshallah.
Likewise, yes, sir. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
now that we're talking, I look forward to seeing you in person.
Oh, brother, I'm gonna give you the biggest hug you've ever got.
We'll talk again long before then, but I look forward to seeing you then.
Yes, sir, brother. Likewise.
Yes, all right, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Sister April. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. Walaikum salam, Brother Lukman.
Yeah, that tone level already sounds like it's high.
Yes, sir. Let me tell you why.
Okay, go ahead. You got the floor.
I'm just saying, like all of us, we're dealing with a lot, but Allah gives you the tools that you need to help lift you up. And I just dealt with 2 deaths. That's no different than what anybody else is dealing with. But I tell you, when we have a platform like this to come to help us, it is such a blessing. It is such a blessing, and I'm so thankful. I called the sister that you gave me her number. I left a message with her and everything, so I can go and get started.
Sister Cheryl?
Yes, Sister Cheryl. But I said today I'm gonna jump on here because, and forgive me for being late. I wanted to jump on here because I know next week I'm teaching while you have your class. So I wanted to come on. This will be the first time I'm able to come on during the week. But I just want to thank you for being here.
All praise is due to Allah. I'm just
that's my sister there.
Huh?
Assalamu alaikum.
Yes, sir. I'll be back into the meeting next week, Brother Tim.
Yes, ma'am.
So, yes, Sister April, what do you teach?
Well, I'm actually a teacher's aide for MUI.
Oh, okay.
And Sister Sabira, she teaches first through third grade, and I do math and literacy with her. And then for Sister Latifa for middle school and high school, I do language arts.
Well, okay. Praise be to Allah. Praise be to Allah. Did you ever think about doing your own, like your own class? You know, something like like we do here with the Zoom with the language arts or anything like that, or?
I had not. It had been suggested to me. I had not, but that is something to think about. But it had been brought to my attention to do that. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, I'm grateful and thankful. It's been my personal mission. And it's almost like this was something that I don't think I chose, but somehow it chose me. And that is when I started getting into the tech back in 2010, 2011, and I started seeing, by Allah's grace, the relationship between what L. Ron Hubbard was teaching and what we've been learning. I felt it necessary to go back through again in the tech and bring it in a way, like the minister said, marry the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech so that we can go get those tools, but bring it back in our language. And that's just every day nonstop. It's like my brain won't shut off. I mean, sometimes the first thing in the morning when I wake up, my brain goes to, oh, wait a minute, L. Ron Hubbard said this, and this is what Allah said. My brain is always, sometimes to the point where I can't even sleep at night because I'm always jotting down notes and whatnot. But the payoff is when sisters like yourself and when brothers, when they can reap the benefits, and it actually, we can see how it has helped the believers, then I'm just grateful to Allah to have that as a way of contributing back to the family. So my tone is already up just from, my tone is up seeing the believers. Every day is Savior's Day. That's right. So seeing the believers, even though I don't always get a chance to see the believers, I get to see your names in these black boxes, but.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. Thank you again, Brother Lukman, for this beautiful, beautiful platform.
Praise be to Allah.
It's greatly helping.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. The topic today, I was going through, because I'm trying to finish up what's called the Philadelphia Doctorate course. And really, the Philadelphia Doctorate course is to me a summary of everything that L. Ron Hubbard taught. If you start from the very beginning, the first book was called Original Theses. Then the second book is titled The Evolution of a Science, and then the third book was Dianetics. But when you take all the books and all the tech from that point up, it seems like the Philadelphia Doctorate course is a summary, not only a summary of everything he taught in the tech, but during that time period, the tech evolved. It went through some changes and some upgrades. And I didn't realize how long I've been trying to complete this course, but I see the finish line now. There was some things I came across in the last lesson that I had to send in. And the thought process is, whenever I find these jewels, I just want to pass them on to the believers with the hopes that, you know, we can all utilize this. And I'm going to share a couple of quotes. Hopefully it'll stimulate dialogue. And we're going to connect this to the Holy Qur'an and our supreme wisdom. And then I want to go through an exercise that each one of us can begin to learn and apply with regards to accomplishing our postulates. So when we get to that point, I'm going to ask for one volunteer, and then we're going to go through some steps, and we're going to learn how to take this tech and make it applicable in our personal life. The first thing I want to do is, if we could get out our Holy Qur'an. There's a couple of ayats I would like to use as the foundation. Let's see. There we go. And there's one quote in particular I was able to find, and when I looked at it, I'm like, it reinforced my belief that L. Ron Hubbard, not only did he have contact with the Savior, but I'm firmly convinced that the Holy Qur'an was one of the books that he read and studied. I'm a firm believer of that. The first ayat I would like us to go to is Surah 11, ayat 106. And please forgive me for not having the PowerPoints ready. There it is. But I crashed and burned yesterday. I was so doggone tired. So we're gonna have to open our books today and take some more notes. Who has their Holy Qur'an available?
I do.
Okay, if you could read Surah 11, ayats 105 and 106 and 1 to 107.
Okay, yes, sir. Then as for those who are unhappy, they will be in the fire. For them therein will be sighing and groaning, abiding therein so long as the heavens and the earth endure, except as thy Lord please. Surely thy Lord is doer of what he intends.
Okay. Now there's some key elements. There's some key elements here. If you look at 106, there's a connection between the word unhappy and the word fire, correct? Then as for those who are unhappy, they will be in the fire.
Yes.
Okay. Now the thing is, and I really wish I would have had the PowerPoint, but maybe we'll revisit this on Sunday with the PowerPoints. In the Holy Qur'an, there are 7 types of fire that are described. And I think we've covered this in the past. And when you do word clearing on each one of those words that describe fire, and I'm trying to think which one they use in this sense. Nur. The Arabic word is nur, which is one type of fire. In the Arabic dictionary, there's a term called Sheikh an-Nur. Sheikh an-Nur is another word for the devil. Okay, so Nur, the root word, has two different meanings. The root word Nur means light, which also means enlightenment, which kind of has a positive connotation. But the word Nur also has another connotation that describes fire. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So in the Holy Qur'an, there's 7 words that describe fire. And when you do word clearing on all those words are describing tone 2.0, 1.5, and 1.1. They all describe anger, frustration, hostility. So when we use the law of substitution, it says, and then as for those who are unhappy, they will be in low tones. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. So when we look at the fact, and we always repeat this, Allah has given us a book explaining all things. That's Surah 16, I think, Ayah 89. We're using, obviously, going deeper into the ayats to get a deeper understanding of the text. And then they mention in that same ayah, sighing and groaning. Okay, so there's almost like a cycle of action here. Can you see the cycle of action? Unhappiness is the start. The fire is the change, or the next part, which produces what? Sighing and groaning. Okay, so when you see people that are sighing and groaning, if you go in reverse, that would mean that they are in the fire, correct?
They're in the fire.
And if they're in the fire, that means that they're unhappy, correct?
They're unhappy, that's right.
Okay. Now, when you deal with groaning in Dianetics, it brings us to an interesting concept. Let's see if I can find it real quick. With my books. Okay. In Dianetics, there's a term called misemotion. Have you ever seen that before?
Sir,
Yes,
I
sir.
haven't come across you yet.
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
Okay. There's a term in book 1, and I think it's also in Science of Survival, where he talks about misemotion. I'm just trying to see if I can find it in my dictionary real quick. Here it is. Okay. Misemotion, by definition, he says, is anything that is unpleasant emotion, such as antagonism, anger, fear, grief, apathy, or a death feeling. Emotion and misemotion include all levels of the complete tone scale except pain. It says emotion and misemotion are closely allied to motion, being only a finer particle of action. And what he says in Dianetics, if I can pull that up real quick, hopefully I can find it. He speaks specifically. I'm not gonna be able to find it. But have you ever noticed when something happens and you go, ugh, you take that deep breath?
Yeah.
Like when you walk into the house and you look at that sink full of dishes because you've just been so busy, and you look at the dish and you go, ugh.
Yeah.
Does anyone ever catch yourself doing that out of the blue? You just take a deep breath for no reason?
I have.
Who is that? Sister Denise?
Sister April.
April? Okay. What that represents from the perspective of Dianetics is there's some type of an occlusion there. There's something there that's re-stimulating, and that produces that deep sigh.
Yeah.
So that deep sigh is connected to something that has not been contacted yet, but is present. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense.
Okay. So going back to the Holy Qur'an, then as for those who are unhappy, they will be in the fire. For them, there will be sighing and groaning. That connects to the Dianetics and gives us a description in an allegorical kind of way. So Allah says some of the verses are decisive, they are the basis of the book, and some are allegorical, correct?
Yes.
So many of the ayats in the Holy Quran are basically given to us as pictures. They paint a picture of a situation, but they give it to us in the form of a picture. So each individual can look into the ayats and are able to find what works and fits for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It's like we've been told that if you want to talk to God, you get out, you make salat, but when you want God to talk to you, you read the Holy Quran. Has anyone ever heard that before?
I have, yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
As we read the Holy Quran, it's like a personal dialogue. And each of us will see in the ayats what we need to see for our growth and development. Okay. So that's the first part. Sister Tina, assalamu alaikum.
Lord, wa alaikum salam, Brother Luqman.
Uh-oh, you sound like you got a cognition or a win or something.
No, I'm just late.
Oh, that's
Sorry.
okay. No, we're just glad that you're here.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
That you're here. Sister Tina, we are reading the ayah, Holy Quran, Surah 11, verse 106 and 107. That's our starting point for today.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. And what we were just going over is in ayah 106, it talks about, it says, then as for those who are unhappy, they will be in the fire. For them therein will be sighing and groaning. So we're linking unhappiness to the fire. The word fire, when you go in the Arabic dictionary, it describes tone 2.0, 1.5, and 1.1. And then when you deal with sighing and groaning, do you remember in Dianetics where he mentions that in book 1? And he called it misemotion.
Oh no, I don't remember it, but I remember Miss Emotion.
Okay. Let me see if I can just find it real quick. That's the beauty of having the book on PDF. You can do word search and it takes you right to where you gotta. It takes you right to where you gotta go. It's a wonderful thing. There's no way in the world I would be able to do this. Let's see, maybe it was Science or Survival. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, one more. Here we go. All right. Okay, in Science or Survival, it's found on page 91. And it is comes under column F as somatic. And he says, in short, anything physically uncomfortable. It does not include mental discomfort such as grief, which would be misemotion. Hard breathing would not be a somatic. And then it says it would be a symptom of misemotion suppression. So that hard breathing is indicative of something that's suppressed. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I do it all the time. And sometimes I catch myself, and then I try to catch when I do it. And what I've seen in myself is there's certain times when I'm frustrated and I do it. And then I've been kind of studying myself to pinpoint specifically, and it goes back to my childhood. Mm-hmm. But I can't find the specific instance, because once you can tap into that, that would be the basic on the chain, correct?
Yes, sir.
And to get the basic on the chain, you got to go through the auditing. And unfortunately, I'd have to go all the way to New York to the org to get that done. And my schedule is crazy. But here's the key of those two ayats. Then it says, abiding therein so long as the heavens and the earth endure. And it says, except as thy Lord please, surely thy Lord is doer of what he intends. And this is what we were talking about Sunday with regards to postulates, correct?
Yes, sir.
He's the doer of what he intends. So make a mental note of that ayat. The next ayat is Surah 2, ayat number 253. And who would like to read that one for us? Surah 2, verse 253. Any volunteers? If not, okay.
You said 253?
Surah 2, verse 253.
Okay. We have made some of, right? Okay. Mm-hmm. We have made some of these messengers to excel others. Among them are they to whom Allah spoke, and some of them he exalted by many degrees of rank. And we gave clear arguments to Jesus, son of Mary, and strengthened him with the Holy Spirit. And if Allah had pleased, those after them would not have fought one another after clear argument had come to them, but they disagreed. So some of them believed and some of them denied. And if Allah had pleased, they would not have fought one with another. But Allah does what he intends.
Okay, so here we go again. Allah does what he intends, correct?
That's what it says.
But now if you look at the one part in that ayat, it says, and some of them he exalted by many degrees of rank, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you clear those terms, there's agreement between that statement and the tone scale. Degrees of rank, correct?
Okay.
Because isn't that what the tone scale is? It's a gradient scale going from aberration to high tone level emotion.
Is that why, Brother Lukman, when you come and you are happy and and someone else don't want to be happy, they look at you and say, "What you happy about?" Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about that because I run into people and you're high on the tone scale. I mean, you up there, and you don't have nothing to be smiling about. I mean, it's like want to just wipe it off of your face.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought about that as reading it. Yes, sir. Okay.
Remember when the minister broke down the word dragon?
Drag you
He
down.
broke down the word dragon as drag on. Sometimes you come in contact with people, they just drag you down.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. I call them spiritual vampires. They just suck the life out of you.
Let's call them spirit killers.
Say what?
Spirit killers.
Spirit killers.
Yeah.
How would you what term is used in Dianetics to describe people like that?
Suppressor.
Suppressor is one,
Yeah.
and then there's a course called Ups and Downs.
Right.
Right.
They're
Right.
called SPs.
Antisocial.
Antisocial
Yeah.
personality.
Yes, sir.
Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was thinking of that big foot in that life's ups and downs. I always want to keep you under a big giant foot. You know, that type of personality.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
That's all. That's all.
There's I have an article somewhere. I was trying to find it. L. Ron Hubbard makes reference to the suppressives, and guess what term he uses when he speaks about them? Think about the supreme wisdom, and what would be the suppressors in the supreme wisdom?
I think you talked about it before. It was either I've heard him say something about devil, but also I guess it would be the 10%.
He uses the term 10%.
Yes, sir.
I gotta find. I have it around here somewhere. I gotta find it because I always like to have actual facts. And like Dr. Wesley says, want to make sure I have receipts. My father always said, make sure you keep your receipts because then you can talk smack. But he didn't say it like that. But that's the clean version. Anyway, so we look at this ayat, and it's describing individuals that excel others, which we can translate into the language of Dianetics as far as excelling, going up and down the tone scale, correct? Could we make that correlation? That individuals are at different gradients on the tone scale?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And it says, and we gave clear arguments to Jesus, son of Mary, and strengthened with the Holy Spirit. Well, who are we talking about if we apply that in the modern time? Am I in the right room? We know who the Jesus is right now? Who's the Jesus in our midst?
Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Sir.
Okay, I thought maybe I was in the wrong room there for it got real quiet.
Back.
So this ayat, we gave clear arguments to Jesus. Well, didn't the minister say that he found something? He found something in the text, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so could we say that he was given a clear argument?
Mm. Yes, sir.
All right. And it says, and if Allah had pleased, those after them would not have fought with one another after clear arguments had come to them. Was there not a separation when the minister gave us instructions to study the text?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then, is it safe to assume that there are some believers that were at odds with other believers because they thought the minister had changed the teaching?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can we see the parallels if we take this ayat but we apply it in the present perfect tense or present tense?
The clear argument, yes, sir.
Okay. And then it says, and some of them believed and some of them denied, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Because many believers may have said, Well, the minister is the one because the Most High Elijah Muhammad said, wherever he says go, go. Where he says stay from, correct?
Yes, sir.
And they believed that wholeheartedly until he instructed us to study the Dianetics. The same individuals that were saying Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest, after he instructed us to study the Dianetics, they were saying what? Crucify him, crucify him. He's changing the teaching, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does anyone, I mean, is this making sense? It's awfully quiet.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
I
That
can't see,
definitely makes sense.
I don't see anyone's faces, so I'm trying to, usually I try to vibe off expressions, but I just have a lot of black boxes in front of me, so I can only vibe on feedback.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
we kind of, I'm sort of listening to see how you make that connection.
Can you see the connection?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
All we're doing is we're taking the ayat and we're making it applicable in a modern context.
Okay.
Okay. Because we can read this all day long historically. And reading it historically will give us knowledge, but we can't apply it to change our condition. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. What you're reading, it just brought back to mind what I just read in Closing the Gap the other day, from page 285 through 287, what the minister was saying about we're Yaqub in reverse.
Yes.
And that to make a God, you start with the same group of people, the dissatisfied. And I had to ask myself, dissatisfied in what? Dissatisfied in this world's life. Like the people that Yaqub used, they were dissatisfied with what was going on in the Holy Land. 100% dissatisfied. So you start with the same group to make a God. You start with dissatisfied. So dissatisfied in Satan's world. So, and then from that people, you find those who are willing to suffer for change. And they become willing participants, and they remained fascinated with the new and fastened to the new. And Dianetics, the study of Dianetics and the technology of Scientology is new. It's new to us. But some of us remain fascinated with it and fastened to it because the minister gave it to us as a tool. So what you said just reminded me of that clear argument.
Yes, ma'am. Two key points. One, is new to us in this dispensation, but when we study the ancient writings, and I know there's a video where Mother Tainetta speaks about this. She talks about what's called the Vedas, and the Vedas is an ancient text, goes back, I think, might be 4 or 5, possibly even 10,000 BC. It's an ancient writing from India, but in the video, she states how that all comes from the original man. That's number one. Number two, when you look in our lessons, based on what you shared with us, you know, how did we graft devil? We had the black and the brown germ, and we were told that whenever there was a black baby born, that they killed it off, and when there was a brown baby that was born, they spared it. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So they found the unalike, and they kept that, and they killed the like. Now, when you do that in reverse, what we have to do is we have to find the unlike and get rid of that and find the like. In other words, we have to find the falsehood. One way of looking at it is there's truth and falsehood. And when you look at it symbolically from the perspective of Patmos, they found the falsehood, they killed off the truth, and then they married falsehood onto falsehood. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So now in the modern dispensation, we have truth and falsehood again, but now we have to take the falsehood, we have to kill that. We have to argue in the best manner and hurl truth at falsehood until we knock out his brains. We kill the falsehood, then we have to marry truth onto truth.
Right.
If the more truth we can marry onto truth, then what happens to the falsehood? The falsehood diminishes. So what happens is, this is part of the process that the Most High Elijah Muhammad speaks about in Our Savior Has Arrived, when he speaks about that 20-year period of making the mind clean. One way of making the mind clean is to remove the falsehood, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how do you remove falsehood? You have to go back, you have to go ahead.
With truth.
With truth. With truth. So it's just like when the house is dirty, you're not necessarily adding clean to the house. Clean is already there, but it's under the dirty. What do? You remove the dirty and the clean is there, correct?
Yes, sir.
So the God in us is present, but it's buried under the stuff that's on our time track. So as we go through and start to remove the stuff off our time track, what are we doing? We're freeing up that life force. It's the things that took place in our past and the people and what they said to us that's keeping us from manifesting the God that's in us, because we have this whispering devil, Surah 114, which is synonymous with the demon circuit in Dianetics, that whispers in our ear. And every time we have a great idea, a great thought, or a great intention, we either listen to a voice within ourselves, or we listen to the demon circuit coming from someone else, as you were saying, people that don't like the fact that we're happy. So what does that do? That takes away our energy. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. So now at the last part of that, it says, and if Allah had pleased, they would not have fought with one another, but Allah does what he intends. So again, Allah does what he intends. So when you look at the word intention, intention is dealing with a desire to accomplish a goal, correct?
Right.
Yes, sir.
If you have an intention to do something, that's just the same as a postulate. The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says in the Self-Improvement Study Guides, desire feeds the will. Here's how L. Ron Hubbard says it. He says, the entire subject of postulates is a subject of certainty and self-belief. That means a postulate is equal to certainty plus self-belief. That implies when you postulate, or when we postulate something, we have the belief that we can accomplish it, and we have the certainty that it can be accomplished, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many times have we postulated, but we weren't certain, and we didn't believe we could do it? Has that ever happened?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Okay. The Bible says, believe and doubt not, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So the inability, oh, go ahead. Someone was saying something?
No, I was just thinking, I was just reflecting on what you said.
Okay. So basically, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that you could almost give that as a description of faith, a combination of belief and certainty.
Yes, I was thinking about that, but go ahead. Keep flowing with your idea.
That was it. That's what I was going to say.
Okay. So if we say faith is the evidence of things hoped for. No, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. That's the Bible, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now watch this. Whenever you watch a crime show, okay, like Forensic Files and those shows, evidence bears witness that a crime was committed, correct?
Yes.
That's what they look for. So we don't know who committed the crime. We might not know when the crime was committed when we first find the evidence, but the evidence bears witness that something exists, correct?
That's certainty.
Okay. So when we say faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen, then wouldn't that apply that the fact that we have faith in something, that something already exists, but it just hasn't manifested yet?
Yes, sir.
So as long as we have faith in something and we work towards that something, then eventually that something will be manifested, correct?
Yes, sir.
But when we lose faith, then we lose work, right?
Right. And now we're not believing in who we are, which is God. And that's the God force in us, is to postulate, to be able to see that which is unseen and bring it into the realm of the seen.
Mm-hmm. Now here's a thought that came to mind a couple of days ago. And let me lay a foundation first so that it doesn't sound blasphemous. If you look at Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2, question number 1, it says, who made Holy Qur'an a Bible, how long ago? In part of the answer says that we are all Allah, right? The supreme being, the black man of Asia. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we all understand that we're not the supreme God at that time. There's always one God that sits in that seat, but we are all gods, children of the Most High God, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Could we then, and this is just a thought, could we then, everywhere in the Holy Quran where it says Allah, could we possibly insert our name in there?
We could.
Could I say, and if Luqman had pleased, they would not have fought with one another, but Luqman does what he intends. I could do that if I was one with Allah. Is that a possibility? Now, I'm not saying that I'm the supreme being. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I'm a subset of a larger set, if you understand. Does that make sense? Agree, disagree, comments, thoughts, correction?
Say again. Could you say it again?
If I look in the Holy Quran where it says, okay, Allah does what he intends. If I am Allah, and I know I'm not Allah as far as the supreme one over the group, but the Most High Elijah Muhammad says that first God that created himself from triple darkness is no longer present, but his person exists in his people today, then there's something within me that is Allah. Does that make sense?
Right.
There's something in you that is Allah. So when you look, it says Allah does what he intends. Could we say Sister Ania does what she intends? Could we say Brother Timothy does what he intends?
All day long.
We can say that when we become one with Allah, then would that mean that we become a part of the we, where in certain parts of Holy Quran, Allah is he or I, and then there's some parts where Allah is we. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So the thought that came to mind is, if I go through the Holy Quran and read, and where I see the name of Allah, if I can place myself in that ayah and see what Allah is doing in that ayah, but then place myself in that situation, could that help me to see myself in another light in order for me to manifest that particular attribute of Allah? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's easy to say that we are Allah, but now what's the blueprint of getting from point A to point B? How do I manifest that? Can I go back and read the Holy Quran and put myself in the book, and it helps me to understand who I really am as an individual?
Right. And it even speaks to the part where it says, and if Allah had pleased, those after them would not have fought one with another after clear arguments had come to them, but they disagreed. So some of them believed and some of them denied. So that's okay. Just to give a quick example, how to eat to live. we're taught what to eat, the best foods to eat. But then sometimes we go into denial and we intend to eat a whole bag of potato chips, knowing that the potato chips are not good for us. Right?
Yeah, stay out of my business, Tanya.
So we have to, that's the Quran talks disbelief, those who are on the right and those who are on the left. So sometimes we have this guidance because sometimes we flip-flop from the right to the left, and then we have to come back to the middle to stay on the straight and narrow path.
And when you look at the media, the way it's set up, this world is set up to constantly drag us away from that straight path. Constantly. Which is probably why we have to pray so much. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Most
someone was telling me, I can't remember who it was, but it was recently, and they was telling me about a Muslim person here in America who's very depressed from the East, but they're very depressed over here because they can't seem to hold themselves together, with keeping the law, and we're over here constantly struggling, in this world, keeping the law. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Something.
The minister said it like this, and I'm paraphrasing. He says, just the fact that we are striving to be righteous in an unrighteous environment goes a long way with Allah. If you're in an environment where there is no swine, there is no those elements that would hinder your growth as a Muslim, if those things are not in your environment, that would be a wonderful thing. I would love to live in an environment where all this madness wasn't present. It's like brothers when they're incarcerated. It's easier on one level to be a Muslim in prison. In the language we use is jailhouse Muslim. But then what happens is when you leave prison and you come back out in society, and then you have access to all those things you didn't have access to in prison, can you maintain your discipline out here that you had in prison? And was that really discipline in prison, or was the fact that you just didn't have access to it?
Right.
But now when you have individuals that are in this unrighteous world, but you are striving to live a righteous life in the midst of this craziness, on one level, wouldn't that make a stronger Muslim? Because if you can strive for righteousness in this environment, how easy would it be to strive for righteousness in an environment where none of these things were present?
Yes, sir.
So then could we say that this is part of the process of being qualified to live in a righteous environment?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's one of the things I used to tell myself in my struggle, still struggling, but I'm a lot better than I was. But I used to tell myself, you want to go, me talking to myself, you want to go all over this world teaching this truth. How can you go to another country where they're eating crazy stuff and you're still eating crazy stuff here? So I used to tell myself, I have to discipline myself according to how to eat to live in order to go anywhere in the world with this teaching and not be affected by it, by the people of that, where I'm going to be sent,
And not only that, but let's say you're sent to a country whose religion might be predominantly Buddhist. How can you relate the Dianetics as a Muslim to someone who is a Buddhist?
Right.
Unless you know a little bit about Buddhism. And why is that included in our student enrollment? If you look at the basis of Buddhism, which is the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path, 9 times out of 10, if you just have an understanding of those two concepts, you can speak to a Buddhist all day long. And when you understand those concepts, you can equate those to Dianetics, but you can also equate those to Islam, because the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the concepts, what we have learned in the teaching of Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they have ARC, they have agreement. So when you look at what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad says in Message to the Black Man, that you cannot say that what you have is the truth unless you study the scriptures of other religions, then that also, I would think, helps us to begin the process that if that day comes and we are, as an individual, sent to different locations, we might be sent to an area where there's individuals whose religion may not be Islam, but they might be a mixture of other religions. If we can talk the language of our Islam, but like the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, when you give a baby a bottle, you put some Islam in it. If we can talk the language of their religion and we can use the Dianetics in the Islam, then will that not provide ARC between ourselves as a Muslim and the individuals that are there, regardless of what their religion is?
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay. Go ahead, Sister Ania.
On that note, since you brought up Buddhism and those other religions, may I just take I guess about 5 minutes to just go over some things real quickly that I read this morning.
Sure, I'm taking ready.
The name of this book is I don't know how to pronounce it. SRIMAD.
SRIMD.
And the second word is like from like Bhagavad Gita, but it's Bhagavatam.
Okay.
And then it says first canto, chapters 1 through 8. And I opened it this morning to page 142. My husband he had opened it first, and we were discussing what was on page 42. And it says the fifth incarnation, named Lord Kapila, is foremost among perfected beings. He gave an exposition of the creative elements and metaphysics to Ashuri Brahmana, for in course of time this knowledge had been lost. And then it says, in the purport, it says the sum total of the creative elements is 24 in all. And I'm just reading bits and pieces of it here that stuck out to me. And this further on, it says, this was done for the first time by Lord Kapila, who is said herein to be the fifth in the line of incarnations. And then further down, it says the sixth incarnation of the Pursuer was the son of the sage Atri. Further on, it says the seventh incarnation was it Yana, the son of so-and-so, so-and-so. And as I was reading these, it made me think of what we're taught about the 12 major and the 12 minor scientists who passed their knowledge, the 12 major passed their knowledge on to the 12 minor, who are the sons.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how the wisdom of God is passed on through the ages. And so I thought of the language that is used in Buddhism and in the Hindu religion. They talk about incarnations, which makes us think that we're born again, we come back as, this, that, and the other. But from what I read this morning, it seems like those incarnations is the wisdom of God being passed from father to son over the eons of time. And so another God is born and raised up but it's just the passage of us being born, death, and not reborn, but another human being coming into existence and being born into that God family. The family of God continues on throughout time from the originator. And then there was another part too, and I'm like, this is just like our teachings all the way through and through. On page 136, says Lord Vishnu is non-different from the personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is in the marginal position between the personality of Godhead and the living entities. Brahma is always a Jitva Tattva, the highest pious living being or the greatest devotee of the Lord is empowered with the potency of the Lord for creation, and he is called Brahma. His power is like the power of the sun reflected in valuable stones and jewels. When there is no such living being to take charge of the post of Brahma, again, that's our language, right? Take charge of this post and all temple property in view. The Lord himself becomes a Brahma and takes charge of the post. And so, you know, I saw in that what you're always telling us about being able to speak our language into Dianetics and speak it into Christianity and into Buddhism and all the different schools of thought. So that I just wanted to share that.
No, that's great jewels that you shared. I'll expand on it in this way. When you talk about the incarnations, what came to my mind is many times when you read books that have the Indian influence, especially like the Bhagavad Gita, the Rig Veda, the Mahabharata, they use names of individuals. But one thing I have learned is those names actually are allegorical. They're allegorical representations of mental constructs. So they hide the symbolism in the names of people. But if you find out the meaning of that name represents something in the self. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Two other points. When you deal with Brahma, Vishnu, and Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita, which is an excellent book to read. Oh my goodness, it's a great book to read. And the interesting thing about it is Hinduism, we taught straight away and became a religion that was very, very polytheistic, correct? Okay, but when you read the Bhagavad Gita, it's a book that talks about a person by the name of Arjuna, and he's about to go to war with his family. And he's in a chariot with Lord Krishna. And the war is taking place at a location called Dharmasekstra, Kurukshetra. And unless you understand the meaning of those terms, you would just think it's just a book based on some war that takes place. But when you go deeper into the understanding of what these words, I think in Hinduism they use what's called Sanskrit, and there's another language that they use. I think it's called Punjabi, I think, but I know some of it is Sanskrit. That war, Dharmasekstra, Kurukshetra, when you clear those terms, you'll see it's a war between the mind and the body. Arjuna represents the self, and Krishna represents the self-accusing spirit, the God that's within self. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And when you deal with Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, Brahma is the creator God. Vishnu is the God that preserves things, and Shiva is called the Lord of Destruction. This is where you get the concept of start, change, stop.
Stop. Yes, sir. I saw that as you were saying it.
That's start, change, stop.
Mm-hmm.
So some individuals might say, well, that's polytheism. Well, no, it's not, because, in Arabic, we would say Allah is Al-Khaliq, the creator. He's Al-Hafiz, the preserver. And he's Al-Mumit, the destroyer. So the same concepts you can translate into the Arabic. And some say when you look at the ancient Egyptian or ancient Kemetic religions, they have all these gods with these animal heads, and individuals with a limited understanding would think that the ancient Egyptian or the ancient Kemetic, our ancient Kemetic ancestors worshiped animals. It's like, no, those animals represented mental constructs, and they put them on human bodies to represent a person that had that quality. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So you have those three concepts. So when you read the Bhagavad Gita and Arjuna is going to war with his family, that's no different than us going to war dianetically, because when we go to war and we're going through auditing, aren't we going to war with our family?
And doesn't the Bible say something about going to war with the members of my body?
Yes, that's the book of Romans chapter 7.
Mm-hmm.
So really, we're going to war with our family when we're going through auditing, because we're making contact with individuals on the time track that are at the root of our valence changes and our dramatizations, correct?
Yes, sir.
So L. Ron Hubbard studied the ancient text, as he used the word, the ancient text of the Asiatics. He says that he uses the term Asiatic, and we know who the Asiatics are. And he put it in the language, that he knew. So he took our ancient wisdom and he put it in a modern language, because he was considered to be, in my opinion, a messenger to his people. So he had to speak their language. He couldn't speak Bhagavad Gita. He couldn't speak Rig Veda, but he could speak science. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is our lessons is the fulfillment of all of it. So in our lessons are jewels, are principles and formulae that help us to gain an even deeper understanding of Buddhism and Sikhism and the Baha'i faith. When you study all these faiths and religions, they're all pretty much saying the same thing on certain levels, but they just use the language and symbolism that's contemporary with respect to the location and time period. Our lessons fulfills the whole thing. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
But the one thing that the Bhagavad Gita said, and this is one thing Arjuna he came to an understanding. Arjuna said that, I understand now that you represent the oneness contained within me.
Mm.
So if you looked at Hinduism based on where it is now, you would think that they worship everything. But when you read the foundational book of Hinduism, one of the foundations is the Bhagavad Gita, it's saying that God is one. It's saying the same thing that the Bible's saying. The kingdom of God is within you.
Mm-hmm.
It's saying the same thing that Buddha says. You got to go within yourself. Suffering exists in the world. Suffering is based on an attachment. That suffering can be removed, but you have to do the work to do it. There's no God outside it. So all the religions are saying the same thing, but man has taken the religions and dispersed it and has caused a mass confusion. But when you see the similarities, then you can go amongst any people, regardless of the religion, and you can dialogue with them and be an ARC with them. And the Buddhist will be in harmony with the Muslim, the Christian will be in harmony with the Sikh. So that's a whole lot of babble, but I'm passionate when it comes to Eastern religion. That's one of my favorite subjects. Go ahead, Sister Tina.
Yes, sir. When you were speaking about the symbolism in the parables, with the different animals, I think they were you were both talking about representing characteristics, and people just reminded me of the Bible, how the animals are represented as characteristics of people, so it made me think about the similarity there. And there was this book I read back in the day in the early 80s called Siddhartha, You ever heard of that book, Brother Luqman, Siddhartha?
I have it, and I haven't read it yet.
Ooh, that's a good book.
Oh, well,
That
you just gave me an assignment then.
Siddhartha, that is such a good book dealing with the Brahmins and even the prodigal son. So it touched a lot on our on the teachings, on religion. And but that book helped me to really see the reality of God coming in the person of a man.
Ooh.
Yes. Yes. When the transformation from one God to the other was made, it was through knowledge. It's by way of knowledge given to the person who was supposed to be the God after the one who was presently the God would leave. Yeah. So that book helped me a lot.
It's funny that you say that, because over the past couple of weeks, when I'm looking at different books to read, I keep seeing that book. It's almost like it's calling, and I said, you know, I got to read that book. I got to read that book. The fact that you just mentioned it means I definitely got to read that book now.
Read that book. Very good book. And then you could tell me about it, what you got out of it. Yes, sir.
How do you spell that, Sister Tina?
Siddhartha. Brother Luqman, you got the book. Can you spell it for her right and exact, please?
I believe it's SIDHARTA. Where's my book at? Let's see. I know it's here because I keep looking at it. There it is. SIDDHARTHA. Siddhartha.
Thank you.
Another good book to read. And it's funny because this book, I used to say, used to follow me when I was a child. I had a habit of the library is only like maybe a block away from my house. So I would go when I was about, I was about 1979, 1980. So around the age of 9 or 10, I would walk down to the library and I would just hang out there all day. And there was a book, I would walk into the library, and on the picture, I thought it was a woman. And it kind of was creepy because I felt like the woman's eyes would follow me when I came into the library. And then when I got older, I used to, on Saturday, what I would do is I would take the bus to the mall and I would hang out at the bookstore. That was back when we actually had bookstores in the mall. And I would always see this doggone book. And it would just, again, it would creep me out. I thought the woman was staring at me. And then fast forward to 1993, I went for one of my first job interviews, and I met this Indian man who was going through the training at the same time. And during the lunch break, we got into a conversation, and he invited me to his home and said he had something he wanted to give to me. So I said, sure. You know, the conversation, I love spiritual conversation, especially when we're dealing with the Eastern traditions. And he gave me a book. And guess what book it was? It was the book with this person's face on it that had been following me ever since I was like 10 years old. And
wow.
The book is called The Autobiography of a Yogi. And the author's name is Paramhansa Yogananda. Has anyone ever seen that book before?
No, sir.
Brother, are you talking about the Yogananda?
This is the book,
yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I always thought it was a woman. And this book would follow me everywhere I would go. And finally, I wound up buying the book. And this is probably one of the best out of all the books I've read. I will put this in the top 5.
Does it talk in that book about his death, the circumstances of his death?
It was something dealing with his stomach. There was something with digestion.
Well, not so much the cause of his death, but I read information about like he died young, considerably young because he wanted to go to the other realms.
I think he was 52, 50, between 52 and 55. There were some things in the book I was like, no, that's a little too far-fetched. But then I came across videos of Mother Tanetta Muhammad speaking of what the Savior could do and what the Most High Elijah Muhammad could do, and it was actually in agreement what he described in that book. So when she says it to me, that's gospel.
Right, and I can't remember if it was Mother Tanetta or somebody else said that he and Master Fard Muhammad were friends, but I've heard that somebody say that I just don't remember who said it, but I've heard that some years ago that they were friends. And what I read, I think I was down at I forget, one of these Sister Denise and I used to go to different trainings where they help, where you use universal energy. But I was at one of those type of places and reading some of the books, skimming through some of the books there. But it has information on after he passed away that his body did not deteriorate right away. And it was, I forget how many weeks that he had this, like, energy was emanating off of his body, and it was weeks and weeks before that finally dissipated. And there was some other circumstances in there, but I just wondered if that was in the book that you have there.
I have to read it again. I read it a couple years ago, but I do remember something like that where his body didn't deteriorate immediately. Another interesting thing is, and if you have any cognitions on this, please let me know. The first time the individual gave me the book back in '93, approximately half the book was missing. I said, well, that's fine. I started reading it, but I never finished the book. I picked it up, I read it, and I couldn't, it was interesting, but I couldn't get into it. I bought the book again, and I started reading the book, and the weird part about it is I had a defective copy of the book. So the book I bought from Barnes & Noble was defective. It was there was a large section of the book that was actually missing. Whereas the pages were actually, it was so I have two copies of this book. And I kept the one that was defective because it had all my notes in it. And I didn't want to it's up there. I didn't want to give up the one that had all the notes in. So this is actually the second copy I bought. But anyone who's interested in Eastern traditions and in books that would give some mass or explain some of the things that we have heard Mother Tanetta speak about, this is an excellent book to read. I'm going to throw this idea out there for the believers, and you can let me know if this is something that might be interesting. I have thought about starting like a book club where we choose one book, we read it, and then we come together and discuss it and see how we can kind of relate it to the teachings and the tech. I've thought about doing that on many occasions. It's just the idea to throw out there, a little book club where we can go into other aspects of information, where we can start marrying the supreme wisdom with the supreme tech, or just the fact of being able to study things from different perspectives. Anyway, that's just a little. Okay, next. There's two other things I wanted to cover before we close out. Surah 2, verse 117. Could we go to that location for a split second?
Somebody has it.
Okay, it says, wonderful originator, of the heavens and the earth, and when he decrees an affair, he says to it only be, and it is.
Okay. He says kum fayakun, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, would that be the same as making a postulate?
Oh, yes, sir.
He makes a postulate, he brings it into existence. The process of how to do that is Surah 87, verse 1 through 3. He creates, then he makes complete, he measures, and then he guides, correct?
Yes, sir.
So to create and make complete, could that be the same as you have an idea, and then you see the idea, you go into the future and you see the idea as a finished product, correct?
Yes, sir.
In Dianetics, he calls these mock-ups. Okay, you have an idea, and then you see the idea as a finished product. Okay, now I project my thought into the future. I can see it. How many perceptives can I produce? I want to mock up this vision of a future conclusion that is a manifestation of the thought that I have right now. Okay, and now what I do is I come back into the present time, and then those ayats, 87 verses 1 through 3, now I measure and I guide. Now I do the work to manifest the idea which I have projected into the future. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So isn't Surah 87, 1 through 3 a blueprint of how to produce a postulate?
Yes, sir.
Isn't that a
Yes,
blueprint?
sir. I can see
Isn't
that.
that a blueprint for a cycle of action? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now watch this. Now listen to this, and then say if maybe it's a coincidence of what L. Ron Hubbard says here. Maybe it's a coincidence. In Scientology 8-8008, he says on page 182, he says, one has to tell oneself what to be before one is. He says recovery of this ability is the essence of processing the Thetan. So Allah says be and it is. L. Ron Hubbard says one has to tell oneself what to be before one is. See, Allah already knows he's God, right?
Yes, sir.
So
And
he
what
can
was that?
say be and it is. We don't know we're God, so we have to first tell ourselves what to be before we can say what is.
And where did you read that from, brother?
This is Scientology 8008.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Page 182. He's saying that one has to tell oneself what to be before one is.
Yes, sir.
So this is the step that comes before kun fayakun. You got to first figure out who you are before you can say what you can produce. We have to first understand we're God before we can say kun fayakun, right?
Yes, sir.
He says this. He says the pre-clear is generally found to be quite uncertain about his postulates. He does not know whether or not what he says will take effect, or if he says it, and if it takes effect, if it will rebound against him. He becomes afraid to make postulates for fear he will make some postulate destructive to himself or others, and may even discover himself making postulates to convince himself he should be ill. There's another part where he says, there's two things we're afraid of. We're afraid of success and we're afraid of failure. So we're afraid of failure. So we don't postulate for fear of failure to bring the postulate into existence. And then we fear to postulate because we're afraid that if we postulate it, it's going to happen. Because now if it happens, we have what? We have responsibility. So because of the fear of success and the fear of failure, we don't postulate. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes sense.
So as a result, this is what we do. He says the most dangerous postulates are those postulates where he decided to agree with something that which will become aberrative. So we're not postulating something positive, and we're always postulating. then wouldn't we be postulating something that's not positive?
Yes, sir.
So that's why it's so easy for us to postulate stuff that works against us. Because we're still God. We have the ability to, we're still saying kum fire kum, it's just that we're telling the wrong things to be, and the wrong things is. But for L. Ron Hubbard to say that, one has to tell oneself what to be before one is. I thought that was quite interesting. Go ahead, Sister Anya. I see you.
Oh, okay. Well, firstly, that goes in line with what the little quote that's on my December calendar, which says, the only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And I wanted to read the footnotes in the Quran that goes with 2 verse 117. It says, the original word is body, which is applicable to the thing made as well to the maker. A thing is body, which is B-A-D-I, which is not after the similitude of anything pre-existing. And body is also the person who makes or produces or brings into existence for the first time, and not after the similitude of anything pre-existing. And then 117b, footnote B, says, kun fayakun is the oft reoccurring phrase in which Allah's act of the creation and annihilation of things is spoken of in the Holy Qur'an. It is not meant by this that there is no gradual process in the creation of things. Evolution in creation is in fact plainly spoken of in the very first words of the Quran, where God is spoken of as Rab, evolver of words, the fosterer of a thing in such a manner as to make it attain one condition after another until it reaches its goal of completion. So just wanted to share that.
So now the question is, what happens in your lifetime if you don't complete what you're supposed to do? Something to think about. It's one of those things that make you go, Because there's another ayat in the Holy Quran. I was trying to find it because it says that. Let's see if I can find it, because I like to give actual facts. It says that Allah has provided death, that He can change us from one state to another. Just an interesting thought. That would imply that death is not the end. It's just a transition, but we don't know what that other part is yet. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir. That also makes me think of start, change, stop. You know, because as we complete goals, to me, that's the death of one thing and the beginning of life for something else, which takes us higher and higher as we complete what we intend.
Look at the caterpillar becoming a butterfly. It takes on a whole nother body. But the life force, we could say the life force is the same life force. But it goes through a period that there's a whole transformation of the caterpillar's body into a butterfly. And now the thing is, we have to understand is that's an allegorical representation, of something that is to teach us something about ourselves. Just something to look at.
And that's also a sign is given too in the fact that we come forth as a baby, and then we transition into childhood, and then we are transitioned from there into adulthood.
And Brother Lukman, I was looking up the word "be" in this dictionary of words origin, and it had to grow or become. You know, because it was you have to be in order for you to say be. It's like you have to accept your own and and be yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking about. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And the Savior gave us the wisdom to tell us who we are, to give us a description of who we're supposed to be, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
You have to accept that. Last part is the concept dealing with what's called, there's two concepts. There's called postulate processing, and then there's something called rising scale processing. But I wanted to give it to us from the perspective of our lessons. So I'll just give this example. If you look at problem number 13, it says, one of the things it says is there's 26 letters in the alphabet, correct? Okay. That's start. There's 26 letters in the alphabet. That's start. This is a cycle of action. The change is if you learn one number or one letter per day. That's the change. The stop is you have to figure out how many days would it take to learn all the letters. Now, if we just go based on that basic premise, there's 26 letters. You learn one per day. How many days would it take to learn the letters? And the response would be what?
26 days.
26 days. Now, that was very easy, right?
Yes, very.
Okay. There's 10 numbers in the mathematical language. If you learn one number per day, how many days would it take to learn the numbers?
10 days.
Okay. That is a basic representation of postulate processing, or what's called rising scale processing. You take a concept, you break it into all the steps that it would take to accomplish that goal. And then you take one gradient step at a time towards the accomplishing of the goal. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
So what I would like to do is I would like for someone to be willing to be part of our experiment with regards to a goal that has been considered but has not been attempted. Does anyone have a goal that they have either tried to accomplish or have thought about doing but have not started yet?
Yes.
Okay, Sister Tina, what is the goal? What is the goal that you have thought about?
Well, the goal is to start Science of Survival.
Okay, so that's our start, right?
Yes, sir.
Not just survival. So we're going to go start, growth, conservation, decay, and stop. That's the cycle of action, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because really you have start, you have stop, and growth, conservation, and decay. That's your change. Okay, so the goal is, and then if we look at it from Surah 87, verse 1 through 3, that's your create. You're creating the idea. You want to complete Science of Survival, right?
Yes, sir. First started.
Okay. Okay, but what's the goal?
Oh, the goal is to complete it. Yes.
The goal. Okay, so create, then make complete. So you had the idea to start it, but to start it to accomplish what? To finish it.
Right. Now, even before that, I'm gonna take something a little bit easier, if it's okay.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Processing, doing the processing from self-analysis, because I haven't done any of the self-processing in about maybe 6 weeks, maybe. So I want to do a processing every day, but I just haven't made myself.
Okay, we'll use that. So we know if you're dealing with self-analysis. Now, as we're doing this, the goal is for every individual that's in the meeting to also write down a goal and do the same thing we're doing right now. It's just that in working with Sister Tina, I'm just sharing how the process works, but it's applicable for all of us to use this. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So we'll start with self-analysis. Okay, so would it be safe to assume that one of the goals could be to complete one list in the self-analysis?
Yes, sir.
Because it's, we might say, well, completing one list might be easy. No, actually, going through the straight wire is not as easy as it might seem.
Right, it's not. That's why I procrastinate with it.
Okay, so the start is self-analysis, and we'll say, one list. So the stop would be, or the end result is the completion of one list. Could we set those parameters for the goal that you're accomplishing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So then you have to decide on one specific list. So that's we'll say a specific list. What would you have to do? So now let's take a list. How many questions, not questions, but they're given, they are given in questions. So let's take one list and we say, how many questions in that list?
Mm-hmm.
So you have a specific list you want to start with?
Well, I'm going in order of the list.
Okay.
So I want to finish the practice list. I haven't finished the practice list.
Okay, how many elements are in the practice list? How many questions?
Let me see. I have to go to it. I'm not sure. I got about maybe 13 more to go in that actual list, I think. Let me see. Boy, it takes me a while to find things, Brother Lukman. I don't know. It takes me a while to find things, so I'm not sure.
I'll grab mine.
Okay.
Okay, the first list, the practice list. You're talking about general incidents?
Yes, general incidents.
Okay, there are 75 items under general incidents.
Okay.
Okay, so there's 75.
And
now,
I'm on, and I left off, I'm on the second page where it's from 12, no, I think that's 8 through 21. I'm on the page where it's 8 through 21.
Okay. Let's look at it from this perspective. Give yourself a time factor of how much time, if you had to start from number 1 on the list to get to 75, how much time would you want to use to complete that particular list? Is 1 week sufficient to go through a whole list?
I don't know. You know what stopped me?
Okay, so here comes the uncertainty and here comes the self-doubt.
Yeah, because what stopped me was that my supervisor, he was keeping up with me. Well, how you going? How you going? How you going? Because I finished the course, but I wanted to go back to do the list because that takes more time. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, I'm doing good. I'm on such and such and so on. So he said, well, don't forget to do the what's the name list at the back. What is that at the end that you're supposed to do after processing?
That last list, if I'm not mistaken, brings you back to present time. It's called the end of session list.
End of session list. So when he said that, I said, oh Lord, here go another list I gotta do. I gotta remember this. So it was like, it just stopped me. I was on a roll, doing it the way I was doing it. but then he said, remember to do the end of session list after every processing. So that stopped me.
Okay, now how many items are on the end of session list?
I don't know because I haven't
Forget
gone to it to look
Go
at
to it. Do you know how many items are on the end of session list?
How many?
4.
Okay.
Now, by knowing that it's 4, because if you look at the list that has 75, you might have made the assumption that the end of session list was a large list as well, right?
No, I knew it wasn't as large, but
you didn't know it was that small either.
No, I didn't realize it was that small either. No, sir.
Okay, so now that you know that there's only 4 items, does that take away some of the ridge?
It does. It does. Yes, it does. It's just a matter of having to flip over to that page after. It's just a lot of work for me, and it's extra work that I really didn't think I would have to do, being that it's just the general incidents. It's not getting into anything like when you get into the actual processing, but I guess it's practice, so I do have to do the end of session because it's all practice.
Now, what if I told you you have already done the end of session list and you didn't realize it?
Okay, tell me that.
Okay, I'm gonna read the end of session list, and you're gonna have a cognition. Watch this. Rapidly sketch over the session just ended. Sketch over what you have been doing, again with particular attention to how you have been sitting. Go over the period of the session with regard only to what you have been doing with your hands and things in the exterior world you have heard during this session. Fix your attention upon a pleasant object near you now. Where did you hear that at?
Oh, Brother Bateen sessions. Sister Jacqueline used to read that every time.
Yes, Sister Jacqueline used to give us the end of session list after the end of each session we had with Brother Bateen.
Right.
That's all the end of session list is. It brings you back to present time.
Yes, sir.
So now what did that just do to your flow with regards to your list?
Well, it reminded me of Sister Jacqueline, even though I was reminded of her when I saw the words end of session list. That reminded me of what Sister Jacqueline used to do, but I just wouldn't look at the words. I just wouldn't look at them to read them. So it made me want to go ahead and do the end of session list.
That's it. That's how the tech works.
Yeah. Yes, sir. It
that
lifted a weight off of my head. It lifted a weight. A weight came off of my brain, off of my head.
That is postulate processing. It's taking a task, breaking it down into its elements, and then hitting each element individually as a small part of a whole. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And then once you can look at the smaller part, then you ask yourself the question. Now we say, at first, the end of session list, that was your ridge, correct?
Yes, sir.
So now what we did was we got you to a point where now you understand what the end of list is, and now you understand that you can accomplish that, correct?
Yes, sir.
What did it do to your tone level?
Well, it brought it back up to make me, my tone is up to make me more determined to start.
Okay, that is called rising scale processing. See, further down the road in the tech, L. Ron Hubbard gets away from chasing after the engrams. Okay, because in order to make a person's tone level rise, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either remove the engram to gain back the attention units, to gain back the life force, or you can increase the determinism. Okay, remember when a while back we dealt with Ohm's law. If you have the current, electricity that makes the light go on, you can make the light get brighter by either reducing the resistance or increasing the voltage, correct? If you remember that correctly. Y'all with me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you increase the resistance, and those of us that remember cassette players, when the battery started to wear out, what happened to the cassette tape?
It started dragging.
Started to what?
Started to drag.
Started to drag on, right? It started to slow down.
Yes,
because
sir.
the voltage decreased. The voltage with regards to the current is like the desire that feeds the will. So when our desire decreases, what happens? We get dragged down, right?
Right.
Okay. It's the same thing with the reactive mind. So you have to overcome the resistance, or you have to put in what? Put in brand new batteries, which means increase the voltage. Same thing happens in the human mind. We have resistance within ourselves, that we still have that Negro. That's our resistance. So we either have to remove the Negro, which is to remove the engram, or we got to increase the life force. So further into the tech, he gets away from addressing engrams and he goes more into what's called postulate processing, rising scale processing, and there's another one. There's creative processing. And what that does is it doesn't focus on the engram, the negative side of ourselves. This processing focuses on the life force. It increases the life force. So if you increase the life force, then you can't be down here where the engram is, correct?
Right, right.
Okay. And what we just did was an exercise that shows how to get tone level up without having to address the engram. You just address the theme, the life force. You do rising scale processing. You remove the ridges, and that's what we did. We have a lot of ridges in our mind that are self-made. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
And it's self-made, meaning it's just a held down 7 that we continually hold down. But if we were to address it, and in Dianetics, they call that what? Confront.
Mm-hmm.
We would just confront it, then we would realize that, man, that wasn't nothing. And come to find out, I already know what the end of session list was. I already have done it. And had I known that, I could have completed list number 1 months ago, right? Is that something we could say?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. If I had just faced it, confronted it, faced the difficulty factor. Yes, sir.
Face that Black Panther.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I refused because it just gave me more work. And I thought that it was enough. I thought I had enough work to do just doing the self-processing. Why I got to do this end of session list? But that's part of the self-processing. So yeah.
So Allah doesn't change a condition until what?
We change our own condition.
So we have to be the God that gives ourselves luxury, money, good homes, and friends in all walks of life, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And when I think about it even further, not completing that task, that goal of at least doing some processing at least once a week, of not completing that goal, it just stopped me from doing a whole lot of other goals that I had set for myself. Mm-hmm.
So your desire was a flow. The obstacles became a ridge, and then it caused you to what? To disperse.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Now, what would be a reasonable amount of time to complete a list that has 75 things to deal with? And if we look at to look at one item on the list, that one item on the list you could probably do in about 3 to 4 minutes, correct? Just one item. Because the first thing it says is, it might say, okay, when was the last time someone yelled? Okay, you find that one. And then it'll say, try to find one a little further back on the time track, correct? You with me, Sister Tina?
I cut you. Did I put you on?
Yeah, you just muted yourself.
Okay.
Okay, so you might have one item on the list that might take maybe 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And because you'll say, okay, find a time when someone yelled. Then they'll say, try to go back a little bit further, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Then they'll say, try to go back even further. So it gives you 3 increments of time to go further back on the time track. And you could probably do that within 3 to 4 minutes, correct?
Because I have to use the wheel.
Oh, the wheel. You got to use that wheel with it. Ain't that something? You got to
Right.
use it with the wheel. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you got to pinpoint a specific perceptive, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say is 5 minutes reasonable for just one item?
That's reasonable.
Okay. So now, how much time would you want to spend in the course of one day going down the list?
Well, I had determined that I would spend 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, 15 to 20 minutes, which means you can cover 3 to 4 items on that list, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
okay.
sir.
Now, so we say 3 to 4 items, but just to make the math easy, we'll say we'll cover 5 items per day.
Mm-hmm.
How long would it take to cover all 75 items of that list?
Well, 5 times what? 5 into 75. Let me see this. That's 3, 15, 33.
50, so 75 divided by 5.
Would that be 33 days?
No.
6, 15.
You said it right there.
How many days would it be?
15.
15. Oh, okay. See, I get kind of slow when I have to do it in my head like that.
I know. We got these mathematical engrams. That's what happens. It's the American educational system. So it would take 15 days to complete one list, right?
Yeah, I would have had quite a few lists completed by now.
So now that takes us back to problem number 13. You have X number of items and you do X amount per day, then you can calculate how many days it would take to complete the task, right?
Yes, sir.
That principle can be applied to anything in life that we do.
Wow.
That's create, complete, and then what did you do? You measure, you broke it up into the days, right?
Yes, sir.
And then you guide. That's Surah 87, verse 1 through 3. You postulate, you see the completed task. Picture yourself completing that list. And how do you feel? So now we're auditing into the future. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
Okay. We're not saying how would you feel. Picture yourself in the future time. You've completed the task. How do you feel after completing the task? You're putting yourself on the time track in the future, and now you're gaining that life force from completing the task.
Right.
And then you measure, you take the elements of that task and divide it by time, and then guide yourself. And then you already know, I have to do X amount today to get to my goal. So then if you decide to do 6 per day, what happens? That diminishes your time.
Right.
That's processing, but that processing is in problem number 13, and it's in the Holy Qur'an.
Wow. Yes, sir.
And you can take any goal that you want to achieve, start or create, then complete, project yourself in the future, and straight wire yourself as far as the goal that you have accomplished, and see yourself and ask yourself the question, okay, what perceptics? How do I feel now that I have completed this? I feel great because I accomplished the goal. What do you hear? What do you smell? Go over the same perceptics, but audit yourself in reverse. Go into the future. Now, I haven't gotten this from the tech. This is something that's just coming out right now. I never thought about this until now. So, but all praise is due to Allah. Straight wire yourself into the future.
Wow.
and then come back to the present. And now you know what it feels like to be victorious. So now it's like, okay, so once I get all this done, I already have my win. I already have my win. It's just that I got to travel into the future to get it.
Isn't that faith?
Say again, sister, you're reading my mind, because I was just saying faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. Your postulate is talking about an event in the future that has already happened, but you have to get there.
Yes, sir.
That's postulate processing. That's postulate processing from the perspective of the tech of problem number 13 and the tech of the Holy Qur'an.
Wow.
Now, the tech might have this, but I haven't read anything yet. That might be something that's up in the OT levels. I haven't been there yet. I'm just going based on what's in our supreme wisdom.
Yeah, well, L. Ron Hubbard says in the Dianetics book, Modern Science of Mental Health, that this science is to evolve, you know, so even if it's not there, it should be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would anyone else like to postulate something we can break down real quick to give some more math?
Yes, sir.
Luke Mon.
Go ahead. Sister Tina?
No, I was saying thank you. Thank you.
Oh, no, praise be to Allah. I'd never thought about it until as we were dialoguing. Where two of y'all are together in my name, I'm the third. So I'm just thankful to Allah that the idea came out, because my tone level just went up, because I have a whole lot of cycles of action I need to complete around here.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Brother Timothy. What do you got? What's going to be your start?
I gave the postulate, I think, on one of the meetings when we were asking us what we wanted to do for 2023. Mm-hmm. And I said I wanted to become an auditor. So I went and kind of asked the people at the org, you know, what are the kind of the steps to get there? And I found out some of the things I've already done. Mm-hmm. One was completing the Dianet extension course. That's part of it. Mm-hmm. So now I have to do, I guess, the drills.
Yes, you're more than halfway there.
Yes, sir. All praises due to Allah.
So your start on your cycle of action is to become a Gold Seal auditor. So now what you have to do is create. Okay, you've already created. Now make complete. See yourself in that org, walking up and getting your certificate, and then see yourself looking back out and seeing other believers there applauding you, and even go as far as picture the ministers in the back of the room, and he's put all this in your mind. Mm-hmm. See yourself with the task already completed. See yourself sitting in a room auditing friends and family. You know, picture people. Sometimes I in my mind, I picture someone coming to me and they say X, Y, and Z, and then I try to picture, okay, how would I respond to that? Mm-hmm. Picture yourself as a Gold Seal auditor. Now, come back to the present time and then ask yourself the question, what are all the steps I have to do? First step is you got to complete the extension course. The second step is you got to complete these drills. And then now to complete the drills, let's say there might be it's been a long time, but the drills aren't that difficult until you get up to the drill with regards to the demon circuit and the valence. Those are a little more difficult. But now take the drills, break them down into how many drills are there. Okay, so that's part of what you have to accomplish. Well, to complete the extension course, you can already check that off. That's already done. That's the bulk. What you have to do. And then now what takes place is, because I'm gonna see if I can find my old sheets. As you're going through, and then you come back and share your wins with us, we can look at these drills, and this is just coming as we're speaking. I'm quite certain now, let me write this down before I forget it. I'm almost certain that I could probably, with the help of Allah, find concepts with regards to these drills in the Holy Qur'an or in the teachings. I believe it.
Yes, sir.
And then now you have all these steps. So if you have 20 drills, and if you did one drill per day, how many days would it take you to complete all your drills and get your gold seal?
20 days.
That's problem number 13 right there.
Yes, sir.
That's problem number 13. That's Surah 87, verse 1 through 3. All day long. So we already have it in our teachings. It's just that we never looked at it from that perspective.
Yes, sir. So the drills are pretty much the only thing left if you've already completed the extension course. Yes, sir.
You might have to go back and review some of the tech as far as the Dianetics, based on how long it's been since you actually have done the actual theoretical side of it. You might just have to go back and review certain things.
Yes, sir.
But you'll notice that as you review certain things, it's, everything is already recorded. It's going to come back. And then as you do the drills, what that does is that gives you the mass to help you understand why this works.
Yes, sir.
And then what we want to do as a group, that, we want to be a part of the process. We want to bring back your cognitions and your wins, because then what happens is you inspire the next person to go back and get their gold seal.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you break down all your steps, then you can predict. You already know the date that you're writing your history in advance.
Right. That's what I was thinking about when you were saying that. I said, because you talked about it in the beginning about who wrote the Holy Qur'an, the Bible. It had to be something. It made me understand a little bit how similar what we're doing now correlates with how that history is written. They see something then they come back to the present time, and then they start making the steps, I guess, to get there.
So then aren't you doing the same thing as one of the major scientists? Aren't you doing the same thing as one of the scientists? You're just doing it on a smaller scale. Instead of writing your history for 25,000 years in advance, you might be doing it for 30 days in advance.
Right. That's right.
So we're doing the same thing that the original man does. We're just doing it on a lower level until we can build ourselves up to do greater things with respect to time, correct?
Yes, sir. Does that, and when you said that, what made me think about was, I don't know if the minister has said, he said like a certain time he would have to say certain things, that the Most High Elijah Muhammad kind of gave him something to say at a certain time. I guess that produces a certain effect. So I just thought about that when you were just saying that. Like to get to the goal, certain things happen at a certain time. So this will, at this point we're ready. Because he could have told us about Dianetics 35 years ago from 2010, but we waited to a certain time but when I listened to Sister Ava in some of her lectures, I heard one from, I forgot the name of it, like 93, but she was talking about it, not saying Dianetics, but she was talking about that going into your memory, your mind.
Mind Wars. It was Mind Wars.
Right. I haven't heard that one, but it was another one I heard. When I find out next time I'm on a call, I'll say it. But yeah, I'm starting to hear the language. Yeah, yes, sir.
So then, can we agree that the language that we're learning in the tech is already in our Supreme Wisdom lessons?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
It's just that we haven't looked at it from that perspective. The original man writes his history 25,000 years in advance. And then I was reading somewhere just recently dealing with genetics that we have approximately 25,000 chromosomes. I said, wow, that's 25,000 chromosomes, 25,000 years in advance. Very similar. And then the fact that why can't we write our history 25 days in advance?
Right.
Why can't I take a task and predict, okay, right now it's December the 28th, why can't I predict, okay, here's all the stuff I'm going to accomplish by, let's just say, I'll round off 30 days evenly, here's all the things I'm going to round off by January the 28th. How many of us even think that far into the future?
Yes, sir.
I know I don't.
I don't either, brother.
So that's just manifesting the God in ourselves. We can say, so would that then be us saying kun fayakun?
Yes, sir.
That's the same as postulating. We're just writing. Postulating is just writing your history in advance. We already have that in our lessons. Question number 1, Lost Found Muslim lesson number 2. It's already there. That's postulating.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Sister Ania. I'm just babbling. But my tone level is through the roof right now. Go ahead, Sister Ania.
Brother Timothy, did you have more before I speak?
Oh no, just to thank you. Thank you. That's it.
All right.
Okay. Well, 3 things. Well, something you just said, and it just slipped my mind. So I'll just go to number 2. When you said that the future has already happened, I think that's how you said it. The future has already happened, but we just haven't got there yet. Is that what you said earlier?
When you postulate into the future, you're producing that in the future, and then you have to get to the future to meet up with what you already postulated.
So when you said it, I had the picture in my mind of, you know, when you go look at an apartment, or if you're designing a room and it's in that blueprint stage and you're deciding where you're going to put the furniture.
Yes.
And so if the future has already happened, in other words, we've postulated it and we're seeing the goal as it is completed. The advantage of the future is that you're able to arrange it, and then if you want to make changes, you can make changes to it.
Yes.
Because that's what you do on a computer generated blueprint of the apartment or the house, where you're going to design, you're going to have the windows here. I'm going to put the couch in front of the windows, and I'm going to put the table here, and the bookcase over there.
Mm-hmm.
But then you change your mind and you say, okay, I wanted to put the bookcase on the other side of the room. So that's what we can do with the future. We're able to, it's not locked in stone, it's mutable, changeable.
Mm-hmm.
And so that we can get the best possible outcome that we want. And right up until the very time that is supposed to happen, we're still able to make those changes, tweak it a little bit to make it a little bit more perfect, a little bit more closer to perfection than before. And so I saw that as you made that comment, and I appreciate that. And and I also wanted to say thank you, Brother Lukman. And in saying thank you, I want to read the opening introduction to Surah 31 of the Holy Qur'an, Luqman, which says, the name of this chapter is taken from that of the sage to whose story it refers. Luqman was an Ethiopian, and his mention here testifies to the breadth of the fundamental principles of Islam alluded to in the last chapter. The aim of this chapter is, like its sister chapters, to ensure the success of believers. And in that we're saying thank you, Brother Lukman, because you're giving us all of this information to ensure our success. You're taking us through this whole little mini course of postulating, because we're getting ready to come up on a new year, where it is customary to make your new postulates for the year, which we call, what's the word that we use for it?
New Year's resolution.
New Year's resolutions. And so instead of waiting until the new year gets here to decide what your resolutions are going to be, you're taking us through this mini course at the end of the year to prepare us to be ready to step into our new postulates starting January 1. And then it says, the first section asserts in unmistakable terms the success of the Muslims. The second refers to the advice of Luqman to his son, And what made me think of it was when you was talking to Brother Timothy just now. That's what made me think of this, is because I felt like that was a father giving his advice to his son on how to be successful, right? But that success that Luqman gives to his son, it says here, which is now meant for the Muslims. And then it says that the third section speaks of the greatness of divine power, which could bring about such an impossible thing as the triumph of the Muslims over their enemies, external as well as internal. And the fourth foretells the doom of the mighty opponents, external. I'm adding external as well as internal. So thank you again, Brother Luqman.
Praise. That's interesting. There was one thing you said, and that leads us to why we become aberrated, is because we don't understand when to change our postulate. Sometimes we make a postulate and then it's written in stone, and then when time and circumstance comes and we don't know how to evolve or adapt the postulate with respect to time, then we're doing something that seems to be out of sync with time. Does that make sense?
Oh, most certainly, because I just did that, brother, 2 days ago. I had made a big postulate that I was going to start for January 1. And just as you just said, time and circumstances said that this is not the time. And I switched to what was my secondary postulate and made that my primary. So yes.
Here's two keys. One thing, same book, page 179. Here's what L. Ron Hubbard says. He says, it is not true that postulates have to be located all through the facsimiles and worn out by repetition. It is just as easy to make new postulates. So sometimes there's nothing that says we can't change the postulate or make a new postulate. That's one thing. When you mention change, there's a book called the I Ching. Has anyone heard of the book, the I Ching? The Book of Changes?
Yes, sir.
That is an excellent book to read if you want to get more in depth with the concept of cycles of action, because the I Ching is dealing with the cycle or the science of the cycle of change. And the premise behind the book, the I Ching, which again has its roots in the original man, it's supposed to be designed to tell you, it's supposed to show you how, with respect to time and circumstance, there's certain times to do certain things and there's certain times to withhold until the proper conditions manifest. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes,
what Sister Ani just said, it just came right out of the I Ching, which is an excellent book. Haven't completed that one. That to me, this is just me, it's a complicated book. It's whenever you look at the writings of the original people around the world, they deal with symbolism and ideograms. When you look at the writing of the Chinese, the Chinese language is based on picture. And you have to really understand the pictures, you have to, I think, be born as a part of that culture and be indoctrinated into that at a young age to understand the full meaning of those symbols. But it is possible to learn. But the main concept of the I Ching is, you can't always do what you want. You have to do it with respect to time. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
It's actually the simplest way to explain it would be like this. If you're a chess player, you might see a great idea. You might see a beautiful move, but you got to wait for the correct time to do it. A beautiful move done at the wrong time can actually cost you the game. So you got to hold that move. And that's what some grandmasters will do. They'll set themselves up in such a way, they have all the condition, all the pieces are in the right spot, and they just wait for you to make one mistake. And when you make that one mistake, all their stuff is in place, and they have the right move to make at the right time, and that's why they're called grandmasters, because they're patient.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. And that's the same, Brother Lukman, that's the same as truth spoken out of season can do more harm than good, right?
Go ahead, Sister Tina. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So here's everyone's assignment, homework assignment. Choose one goal that you want to accomplish. You can use problem number 13 in Surah 87, verse 1 through 3 as your template. Create. Choose your goal. Create, then make complete. So you got the parameters of your cycle of action. Put yourself into the future. And just like when you audit, you got to get the pre-clear to speak in present tense. Does that make sense?
Yes, sir.
You have to get them to speak in present tense and pick up those perceptics in present tense to place their mind in what's called reverie, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
We're going to do the same thing, except do it into the future. See yourself as if you have accomplished that goal. Feel that moment. And speak about the accomplishment of the goal in present perfect tense. Here we go, past, present, and future perfect tense. Rule number 3, right? 13 rules of instruction. Speak in present perfect tense with regards to the goal that you have chosen.
Already done it.
Now, once you have spoken that in present perfect tense, come back to this present and take that goal and break it down into steps. All the steps that are necessary to accomplish that goal. And then start checking off each part of that list. And if you hit a roadblock, that might be, okay, I need to add an extra step. There's nothing wrong with changing your postulate, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Add an extra step. That's what erasers are for on pencils. You can erase. Put another step in there. You might need to break one step down into smaller parts to remove the ridges, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then once you get your whole blueprint, guide us on the straight path. That is your straight path. That's now becomes Al-Fatiha. That is your straight path. And determine your time period. So if you want to do this goal in 7 days, and if let's say, just for let's say that there's 35 steps. Well, let's see, how can I do this? I got 7 days. That means I would have to do 5 per day. That's just basic math, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Now, doesn't it seem easy when you just break it down to this? I mean, all I gotta do is these 5 things today, 5 things tomorrow, and then by 7 days, this is done. That's all it is. That's problem number 13.
Okay.
So when we come back a week from now, God willing, we want individuals to be able to share your win with regards to the goal that you accomplished. Now, just by looking at this, doesn't that raise the tone level of, man, I can accomplish, up you mighty nation, you can accomplish what you will. Anything we put our mind to, we can accomplish. But we have to remember, the minister said there's always a difficulty factor. Does that make sense, family?
Yes, sir, it does. And
sir,
that was something that I was just thinking about either this morning or yesterday about problems and how the minister said that life is always presenting a problem, always.
That's why we're mathematicians. We're scientists by nature. Our job is to solve problems.
Yes.
But don't look at it as a problem. Look at it as an opportunity to manifest the God in self. We just got to change the language.
Can I read from Message to the Black Man?
Well, of course. Yeah.
Page 41, third paragraph. One of the attributes of Allah, the all-wise God, who is the supreme being, is knowledge. Knowledge is the result of learning and is a force or energy that makes its bearer accomplish or overcome obstacles, barriers, and resistance. In fact, God means possessor of power and force.
Praise.
Praise be to Allah.
Page 41. I got to add that to my arsenal.
That's right. Thank you.
Now, God willing, let's see. Next Wednesday is the 4th. So, okay, I don't have to work next Wednesday. Okay, so inshallah, what I would like to share with the believers next week is based on the opening paragraph of Message to the Black Man, where he talks about the law of mathematics doesn't allow us to put three gods into one.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, what law of mathematics was he speaking of? Where can we find in the law of mathematics that would, not that we have to prove the Most High Elijah Muhammad correct, but if we're able to prove what he says, then that allows us to hurl truth at falsehood so we can knock out his brains, because now we're not just repeating. It's one thing, yeah, we can repeat what the minister said, but how can we put it in our own words so that we can explain it in our own language? I want to share with the believers some of the aspects of Message to the Black Man, some things I'm starting to study, and applying the tech to actually going back into the books that we have been given, and showing two rules in mathematics that actually bear witness that what, of course, we know what he said is gospel, but these laws in mathematics will help us to prove to someone else that that's right and exact. You can't put three into one. So God willing, that's going to be next Wednesday. So with that being, oh my God, it's almost 12:30. Oh boy, my apologies. I lost track.
That's okay. Okay.
Lost track of time. So the floor is open for last statements, comments, questions, and then we'll go ahead and close this out. Ooh. If nothing else, then we can go ahead and close it out. All right, family. Let's have our postulates ready for next week, God willing. Whoever wants to share, the floor will be open. But if not, I thank you, believers, for your time and attention. I pray a lot that what we have been blessed to share kind of takes our tone level beyond tone 40, and then we can accomplish anything we put our mind to. With that being said and done,
I'll pray.
Go ahead.
I'll close this out.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Go ahead and close this out, Sister Denise. That's fine.
You done?
I was just going to dismiss myself in the greeting words of peace and paradise. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh.
Go ahead, Sister Denise. Go ahead and close this out.
Oh Allah, we seek thy aid and we ask thy protection. And we believe in thee, and we trust in thee, and we love thee in the best manner. And we thank thee, and we are not ungrateful to thee, and we cast off and forsake those who disobey thee. Amen.
Amen. Family, is this something that you think we should go ahead and post on the YouTube channel to go back and review?
Yes, sir, please.
Okay, I'm gonna, as soon as we get off and it finishes downloading, I will go ahead and put it on the YouTube channel. And believers, feel free to leave comments. Comments could be the seeds for future PowerPoints and future concepts that we can discuss. So by all means, leave your comments, your thoughts, anything that comes up as you're rewatching this, and this helps us to gain more data, so to say. We use data analysis, use more data to produce more information, because the goal is to get the believers back on course to prepare us for the time when the minister is not amongst us. I believe aberration is going to be at an all-time high. And those of us who remain steadfast with the tech will have the responsibility of maintaining the sanity of the believers in his absence. So by all means, leave your questions, comments, and thoughts, and I'll post that today as soon as it uploads. I thank you again, believers. I love you all. I appreciate you all, and I'm thankful to Allah for all of you. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Walaikum salam.
They love you too.
Praise be to Allah.